November 24th, 2025, Beira Rio Stadium, Santos plays International to a 1-1 draw. But in the dressing room, the result didn't matter. Neymar Jr. sat on the physio table, staring at the floor. The diagnosis was brutal. A torn meniscus. The doctors were clear. They told him, "Stop. If you play on this, you might never walk without a limp again. You need surgery for a full recovery." Santos was drowning in the relegation zone. They had 3 games left to survive. Most players would have booked the surgery. Most players would have protected their legs. But Neymar looked at the fixture list and he told the doctors to leave the room. He didn't just play. He went on a 3-game suicide run that defied science. 1 goal and an assist against Sport Recife, a legendary hat-trick against Juventude, and a final, silent masterclass against Cruzeiro. This is the story of how the boy accused of being selfish risked his ability to walk just to save the club that made him. Welcome to Football Story Lab. For 15 years we've been obsessed with Neymar. We called him the heir to Pelé, then a mercenary, then a wasted talent. We judged the haircuts, the transfers, and the headlines. But if you only look at the controversies, you miss the tragedy and the glory of the man underneath. Today, we are telling the complete, true story. From the prodigy who danced past defenders in 2011, to the broken veteran in December 2025, who ignored medical advice for one last dance. This isn't just a highlight reel. This is an autopsy of the pressure, the pain, and the price of being Brazil's chosen one. To understand why he risked his legs in 2025, we have to go back to when those legs were brand new. 2009, Brazil. Neymar da Silva Santos Jr. He wasn't an athlete, he was an artist. In a chaotic Brazilian league, he moved like he was in the Matrix. He brought Joga Bonito back from the dead, the mohawk, the dances, the humiliations of defenders. In 2011, against Flamengo, he scored the goal that won the FIFA Puskás award, a slalom through an entire defense that felt more like a video game glitch than reality. He conquered everything in Brazil. He won the Copa do Brasil and multiple Paulista titles. Crucially, he delivered the Copa Libertadores to Santos, a trophy the club hadn't touched since Pelé. His ultimate test came in December 2011 at the Club World Cup final. Santos faced Pep Guardiola's iconic Barcelona. They were beaten 4-0. It was a brutal lesson. But for Neymar, seeing Messi and the best team in the world up close wasn't defeat. It was a blueprint. It was the moment he knew exactly where he needed to go. The pressure was instant. He wasn't allowed to just be a kid. He was branded the next Pelé. Europe was calling. Chelsea, Real Madrid, everyone wanted him. But he stayed. He wanted to grow at home. When he finally left in 2013, he left as a king. He had no idea that he would return 12 years later, broken but ready to serve. 2013, Barcelona. He went from being the king of Santos to the prince of Catalonia. But the transition was not instant. He arrived in Europe thin, navigating a foreign culture, and struggling against the brutal physicality of the Spanish defenses. He looked quick, but he lacked the muscle and the tactical discipline needed for a machine like Barca. For the first year, the media was worried. They questioned the investment. They asked if he had the steel to survive outside of Brazil. But then came the change. With the arrival of Luis Suarez in 2014 and Neymar's own physical adaptation, the pieces fell into place. The MSN era, Messi, Suarez, Neymar, was born. It wasn't just football. It was a devastating synchronized attack. They scored a combined 122 goals in their first season together. In 2015, they conquered Europe. Neymar scored in the Champions League final against Juventus to secure a historic treble. At 23, he hadn't just fit in. He had become 1/3 of a legend. By 2016, Neymar was no longer just the prince. He was arguably the most explosive player in the world. He had absorbed the best of Messi's discipline and married it to his own raw genius. But second best is a dangerous place to be for a man with his ambition. He was winning everything, but the Ballon d'Or, the ultimate crown, remained unreachable while Messi was in the same shirt. The breaking point came on March 8, 2017, the famous remontada against PSG. Neymar played the game of his life. He scored the free kick, the penalty, and delivered the desperate assist to win 6-1. It was his masterpiece. But the next morning, the newspapers put Lionel Messi on the front cover. Neymar realized that as long as he stayed in Spain, it would never be his team. To inherit the kingdom, he had to leave the empire. So he made the move that changed football and his own destiny forever. Summer 2017. 222 million euros, the most audacious transfer in the history of the sport. Neymar was no longer running away from a shadow. He was running toward a crown. He was the undisputed star of a new empire, meant to deliver the one thing Paris craved, the Champions League. It started with blistering dominance. In 6 years at the club, Neymar scored 118 goals in 173 matches, becoming one of the club's all-time top scorers. He was crowned the Ligue 1 Player of the Year in his first season. He won 5 domestic titles in France. Individually, he had fully transformed into the global superstar he always wanted to be. But the conquest came at a terrible price. In France, the physical toll was constant. Year after year, data confirmed he was the most fouled player in Europe, often getting hacked down 4 or 5 times a game. Defenses treated him not as a playmaker to be stopped, but as a problem to be physically eliminated. Then came the curse, the metatarsal fractures. 2018, 2019, it became a recurring, devastating pattern. The rhythm of his career became simple: hit peak form, then crash, and miss the most important matches of the season, the Champions League knockout rounds. PSG fell against Real Madrid, against Manchester United, and the world began to notice what he wasn't doing. And the worst injury of all was the narrative. The world stopped seeing the victim of brutal fouling and started seeing the celebrity. They called him a diver. They made viral memes out of his pain. They ignored the fact that his bones were snapping while mocking him for missing games to attend his sister's birthday. He came agonizingly close in 2020. In the silent, empty arenas of the COVID-era Champions League, he dragged Paris Saint-Germain to their first final. It was a raw, emotional performance fueled by years of pent-up failure. But they lost to Bayern Munich. He had reached the summit, only to find the trophy was out of reach. The dream was dead. The gold had turned to glass. The fans, frustrated by the lack of European glory and the constant injuries, finally turned on him. "Neymar, get out!" they chanted outside his home. The king was broken, isolated, and a prisoner of his own $222 million crown. His next move, a transfer to Al Hilal, was seen as the final, sad surrender. He was adrift, but the greatest stories are not defined by where the hero falls, but by where they choose to return, and a different club was calling him home, a club dying for a miracle. By 2023, Europe had closed its doors. He moved to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. The critics said he was done. They were almost right. In October 2023, playing for Brazil, his knee buckled, ACL tear, meniscus damage, the career killer. For nearly all of 2024, Neymar was a ghost. We saw him at poker tables, we saw him on cruise ships, we didn't see him on a pitch. Al Hilal paid hundreds of millions for 5 games. In early 2025, they terminated his contract. He was 32, he was a free agent, and his reputation was in tatters. When he landed in January 2025, it felt like a coronation. The king had returned to save his kingdom. For the first few months, the script seemed perfect. He scored in his debut, he kissed the badge. The Villa Belmiro was sold out every week. The fans believed the Messiah had come to solve every problem. But football is not a movie, it is a brutal reality. As the season ground on, the fairy tale dissolved. The team was disjointed, the defense was leaking, and Neymar, at 33, battered by a decade of injuries, could not press for 90 minutes. By October, the love turned to venom. Santos dropped into the relegation zone, and the fans didn't blame the defense, they blamed the star. They saw his high wages. They saw him walking when the team lost possession. They questioned his heart. He is just here for a retirement tour, they said. He doesn't care if we go down. In a home loss to Flamengo, the unthinkable happened. The Vila Belmiro booed Neymar Jr. He walked off the pitch alone, labelled a mercenary in his own home. Then on November 24th against International, tragedy struck. He felt the pop. A meniscus tear. The doctors were clear. Stop now, surgery immediately, or you risk your ability to walk. The season should have ended there. He had every excuse to quit. The fans hated him. The doctors warned him. He had millions in the bank and a legacy already secured in Europe. But Neymar realized something. If he walked away now, he would be remembered forever as the man who let Santos die. He looked at the fixture list. 3 games left. He told the doctors to strap it up. He chose the pain. 4 days later, against Sport Recife, he played on 1 good leg, 1 goal, 1 assist. 5 days after that, against Juventude, came the masterclass. A hat-trick on a shattered knee. He didn't celebrate with smiles. He screamed at the stands, a release of pure, agonizing rage. He was showing them exactly how much he cared. And finally, December 7th, the last stand against Cruzeiro. He didn't score that night. His body had nothing left to give for goals. Instead, he orchestrated the game. He dropped deep. He attracted defenders. He created the space for his teammates to score 3 times. He provided the opportunities. He was the conductor of his own funeral. When the whistle blew, Santos was safe. 3-0. Only then did he let himself fall. Today, December 2025, Neymar has confirmed he will have surgery and focus on his next contract and getting ready for the World Cup 2026. The recovery begins. The 2026 World Cup is 6 months away. Can a 34-year-old, after 2 major knee surgeries, make the squad? But looking back at this week in December, the question of wasted talent feels irrelevant. A wasted talent doesn't risk his ability to walk to save a dying club. A mercenary doesn't play through agony for a team that can't pay him millions. History will remember the trophies in Barcelona and the money in Paris. But the people of Santos will remember November and December of 2025. They will remember the suicide run. The boy who left as a prince returned to save them, and he paid for it with everything he had left. He left Santos in 2013 as a prince, full of tricks, joy, and the promise of the world. He returned 12 years later as a king, battered, scarred, and broken. But a true king doesn't just rule when the sun is shining. He bleeds when the kingdom is falling. Neymar Jr. gave his knees, his career, and his final years to save the soul of the club that made him. It wasn't the ending he planned, but it was the ending Santos needed. This was the story of how the prince came back to save them. I want to thank you for taking this journey with us. If this story moved you, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps get these documentaries out to more football fans around the world. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think this suicide run was one of the greatest moments of Neymar's entire career? Or was it the Barcelona treble? Let me know your thoughts and tell me which football legend's story you want to see us cover next. Make sure you are subscribed to Football Story Lab so you don't miss what's coming. I can't wait to talk to you in the next one.